like the 65-degree winter days. Solar powered, yes. It's funny, if this was ours and our body temperatures have changed, you're going to sweat, right? But I'm out there in this, I was out in the sun for an hour straight with the sun on my back. It was making it. And just because we're not used to it. It was 34 degrees the other morning, a couple of mornings ago. We need water, we need some rain.
Is this already up?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Public Safety and Justice Committee on February 6th, 2020 at 2 p.m. I am Supervisor Susan Ellenberg. I'm the chair of this committee and sitting with my colleague Supervisor Mike Wasserman, who is the vice chair. And I think with that, I've just established the presence of a quorum, yes? Before we move into public comment, why don't we have everyone on the dais introduce themselves, please?
Good afternoon, Dr. Jordan, Medical Examiner, Coroner's Office.
Damon Silver, Assistant Public Defender.
Laurie Smith, Sheriff's Office.
Matthew Fisk, Pretrial Services.
Patricia Lucas, filling in for Deborah Ryan, Presiding Judge.
Martha Wapinski, Deputy County Executive.
Good afternoon. Rob Coelho from County Counsel's Office.
Gary Hersig, County Executive's Office.
And good afternoon, everyone. Sylvia Perez-McDonald with the Independent Defense Counsel Office.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move into public comment. This item is reserved for persons desiring to address the committee on any matter not on this agenda, but properly within the purview of the committee. Members of the public who wish to address the committee on any item not listed on the agenda should complete a request to speak form and place it in the tray near the podium. And each speaker will have 3 minutes. And I have just one speaker comment. That's correct? All right. Scott Largent. Good afternoon.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. Scott Largent. I was back there. I've been watching videos online lately. They're not the videos I made. They're the ones that Susan Bassey's been putting together online. And when you watch some of this stuff, you'd think I was pulling the strings behind everybody in this county, and there's this massive conspiracy, and I'm setting everybody up, and you know, it's disturbing to watch. And when you see that there's 10,700 subscribers on her account, now any of the players that are involved, none of these people even care. I mean, these are people that are more likely living in basements. They haven't gotten out very much in life. They're kind of stuck in front of a computer. I think over time these people can be dangerous. We've removed the county council attorney that's handling her case because he's scared of his address ending up online. She's just gone too far. And I'm dealing with the same stuff. And you know, when somebody's vexatious in court, when do they become vexatious for filing police reports? So she's filed now 20 different reports, I believe 22 so far right now. A couple of days ago, another report was filed because I went to the 6th District Court, and I went there with Michael Lazarus, went there as a support person with him. He's a friend of mine. But Susan filed reports about that, saying that I violated a stay-away order, that I did this and did that. I'm just confused. When do we stop this from happening? Isn't it against the law to file false police reports? I'm just thinking that. She's jumping from agency to agency doing this. She's using it as it's just a show. And I might go in here to make certain statements and stuff like that, and every once in a while I get arrested using the megaphone. But you can make a statement and kind of go through the process and make your point and kind of come out on top. She's gone after every single person in this county. And I'm not trying to tell people to watch her page. It's just disturbing. And I don't know if she's mentally right. I mean, maybe that's the approach now. Maybe we need to put her on a hold somehow. I don't think she knows what's going on. None of this stuff is factually correct. And I'm just amazed that this is able to continue. And at what point does our county cut off her legal defense, Sylvia? I'm just wondering, do we cut it off? I mean, she has resources and money to harass and stalk people, okay? But she doesn't have resources to pay for her own legal defense. Maybe the county should be cutting it off at that point. If she wants to pull all this stuff, we shouldn't be paying for it. We're filing all these motions in court that are ridiculous. And I went and tried to look over some of this stuff today. I don't want anything to do with it, but I'm literally being dragged in, and I'm sure all of you will be too, if you already have not. So thank you.
Thank you. No other public comment? Thank you. Then we will move on to approval of the consent calendar. Before I ask for public comment on the consent calendar, I have a couple of requests. It looks like you're
I was
leaning in
going to
as well.
suggest putting some items on consent, whatever you wish. You're the chair.
I would like to put, maybe we've got some overlap here.
We might.
I would like to request that we move item 4A to consent, item 6 to consent, and item 7 to consent, although I just want to make a couple of quick comments on the study session topics, which are to thank all of the committee members for providing the topics and then for weighing in on your top 3. They're listed at item 7. The study session dates have been posted to the PSJC work plan, and I particularly want to thank Martha and your team for the work that you'll be doing in coordinating the departments and teeing up those discussions. Do you have anything additional or
Madam
in
Chair, if that was a
conflict?
motion to put 4A, 6, and 7 on consent along with item 9 that already is, I'll be happy to second that motion.
Very good. Thank you very much. Then we have an approved consent calendar.
And I'm assuming that we didn't have any speaker cards for any of those items.
Thank you for
And I-
double checking.
Yep.
We do not. Perfect. All right, that takes us to item 4B, which is the sheriff's quarterly report related to training. And Sheriff, do you want to let us know who's presenting?
Yes, Lieutenant Lopez from the training unit will be presenting.
Good afternoon. Just one sec, and I'll get organized here. How are you?
Doing fine, thanks.
I am Lieutenant Stephen Lopez, Justice Training Center Academy Director and the Assistant Division Commander for the Training and Compliance Division. Just a brief summary, and then I'll ask if you have any questions about this report. As far as the training, we're talking about the last quarter of 2019, and training compliance was working towards our annual and biannual perishable and required skills that are mandated by the standards and training on the corrections side and California Peace Officer Standards and Training on the enforcement side. We are well on track to have that all done. Training during this quarter included training or facilitated classes in crisis intervention, Blue Courage, force options, implicit bias, a multitude of other required and optional courses that were provided by training in the Sheriff's Office. Personnel in the training division actively reviewed several courses during this time. The one of interest might be we reviewed crisis intervention in partnership with behavioral health as far as the effectiveness, the content, as well as the possibility of a pre and post examination, as was the request, I believe, in a prior public safety meeting, to start implementing those things to make sure that our students and our deputies and above are retaining the information. We're still in the process of evaluating that and working collaboratively with behavioral health as we move forward. We've also reached out to the National CIT Officers Association and other players in that course. So we are still actively working on that. The last quarter of any years finds us making sure that we are going to be in compliance with the new state regulations and laws. That's also the last quarter, specifically with the new SB 978 training disclosure requirements. So that also fell into our purview. We're working on that as well. We began to facilitate in-service training at our new Emergency Vehicle Operations Center down there in Morgan Hill, adjacent to the Justice Training Center. So that is moving along. We are actually holding in-service classes with our deputies and our sworn personnel there now. Moving forward into the beginning of this year, we have prepared and we are actually implementing as we speak a large block of Blue Courage training for all of our personnel, specifically a large portion of our custody personnel. This course is designed, it's a leadership course, centered around character though, centered around guardian mindset, centered around commitment and the nobility of policing, and that's a 2-day, 16-hour course. And that kind of brings us up to speed as far as where we are starting in January into this month.
Questions?
Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report. I had 2 notes after reading it to inquire about. One was confirming implicit bias training in the 2020, and you just said that in your opening comments. What about LGBTQ?
So that continues. We are continuing to train the trainers on that topic. And looking into other avenues as far as training, whether it be through, I believe, our colleagues in probation. We're sending a few officers to train the trainer course. That is continually trained at the academy as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You referenced Behavioral Health Department recommendations. I didn't see that in the report. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, crisis intervention training, understanding that we want to gear it towards our officers, make sure that they are performing their best and applying these skills. But we realize that while we're the experts in law enforcement, we have experts in the county. So we do speak with behavioral health. We do ask them for recommendations on who we may talk to about certain subjects. In the past, and hopefully moving forward, they recommend and provide instructors for that course to teach our deputies and other law enforcement officials in the county. They might, because of their expertise.
So have they already provided recommendations, or they're going to provide?
This is an ongoing, since the beginning, since the inception of crisis intervention training. It's been collaborative. The Sheriff's Office, we are looking to move forward with it, to evolve it, to get more people through it. So we're looking at the hours, we're looking at the test, we're looking at the instruction, what's beneficial, what needs to be brought in, those type of things. Just a continual evaluation to make sure that the training is pertinent and is the best for our deputies.
Great. I'd like to see an off-agenda report on what some of the recommendations have been, maybe over the past year, and how you're evaluating. Well, first of all, what of the recommendations are you implementing, and then how are you evaluating the effectiveness? Which really kind of brings me to a larger comment that I want to make. I want to first thank you, thank the department for the background that you provided on the content of some of the courses. Where I need to dig more is that I'd still like to understand how we're measuring the effectiveness of the training. I'm interested in knowing what kind of post-training assessments are in place, how we're determining that staff is taking the information that they've gained through classroom hours and applying it adequately in the field. I'll give you a couple of examples of what I'm looking for. The report indicates that deputies go through 16 hours of shotgun safety training. Obviously, a component of the training is practical testing. And obviously, the deputies aren't just reading how to operate a shotgun safety. They are needing to prove that at the gun range. That's an example of practical competency training. But how do we test staff competency when we're talking about less tangible skills, such as responding to an instance of domestic violence? Of course, the trainees can read definitions and case studies, but I'd be interested to know how we're validating that they are prepared to respond appropriately in the field. And in our November study session, the topic that we're looking at involves encouraging the abolishment of dehumanizing language. And I'd be very curious to know how we're going to assess and evaluate the effectiveness of whatever recommendations that we put in place. And I realize that this is perhaps a difficult question to answer on the spot, so I'd like to ask that my staff, that Yvonne will work with the sheriff to identify ways that we currently are determining training adequacy, and then I'd like an off-agenda report back on what we do find. I really want to appreciate that you all are taking the time and expending the resources on training. Now let's go that next step and evaluate and make sure that what you are teaching and encouraging is actually being applied in the field.
Understood, Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the dais have comments? Do I need a motion? Okay. All right. Then that will conclude item 4B, and we will move to item 4C. I do have a one comment card, so why don't we first see if there's a presentation. Like magic, I have 2 comment cards. Is there a presentation first before we take public comment?
Yes, there will be a presentation, a brief presentation from Lieutenant Nguyen and Captain Sepulveda.
Right, and I understand that the PowerPoint was just delivered maybe moments ago, and want to remind everybody from all of our departments to please make an effort to get them in beforehand, both so that the committee members and others can review them, and also so that we can get queued up smoothly, although you've clearly got the smooth queue up there, Dave. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain David Sepulveda, Sheriff's Office Custody Bureau. I'm here with Lieutenant Joe Nguyen, who oversees our grievance unit. He will be presenting the information that we have today for you.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Joe Nguyen, Grievance Unit Coordinator. So on our presentation here, we evaluate our measures of success, and it's continual with the Sheriff's Office. We established a goal of 30 days or less for all submitted grievances. We monitor regularly utilizing the ACES tracking databases for all submitted grievances from all inmates. Our implementation of a robust tracking system is the ACES system. The future will be the JMS system that will be implemented once we get to that point. For the next slide, we measure our success by timeliness, and our goal is to return all inmate grievances within 30 days or less to all inmates. More importantly, the instant response is needed for a thorough review. With the fourth quarter of 2019, 99.56% of all submitted grievances were answered and returned back to the inmate within 30 days of their submission date or less. This yields an all-time high for us since the adoption of the ACES system in June of 2017. One thing to note is that the Elmwood Men's Facility achieved a 100% timeliness rate for this past quarter. The next slide is our meaningful response measurement. One way we measure meaningful responses is whether a grievance is resolved. If it's resolved with a meaningful response, we come to an understanding that it won't be appealed. So the grievance appeal process allows an inmate the opportunity to contest the original disposition of a grievance. Out of 1,583 submitted grievances for the fourth quarter of 2019, 63 or 4% of all dispositions were challenged by the inmate. Since the ACES tracking system was adopted in 2017, the percentage of appeals to grievances has not been higher than 5.5%. So this 4% is actually our highest, or actually our lowest appeal rate since 2017. Our next slide is trends that we identified comparing this last quarter of 2019 to the previous quarter of 2018. Overall, there was a 20.3% decrease in inmate grievance submissions compared to the previous year at the same time. The Elmwood Men's Facility remained relatively stable with a 0.63% increase. The Women's Facility experienced a 14.61 decrease in grievance submissions, but remarkably what we noticed was the main jail facility decreased by 47.46%, so almost 50% of their grievances volume decreased from the previous year to this year. In 2018, the fourth quarter, the staff conduct and behavior category was the highest ranked grievance category at the main jail facility with 223 total submissions. Conversely, the main jail facility significantly reduced that category by 84%, only receiving 36 grievances in the fourth quarter of 2019. For slide 6, this is our trend response for medical. The top 2 categories in the previous slide shows that medical was the #1 highest ranked category for the past quarter. Environmental conditions #2. So this chart above right here shows the trend line for all 3 facilities in regards to medical grievances. In an effort to address inmate grievances and issues, the Custody Health Department piloted a new electronic medical request system at the Elmwood women's facility just a few weeks ago. Newly installed kiosks will allow inmates to automate their medical requests and or needs electronically for proper triage and tracking by custody health services. For the next slide. This is our trend responses for all three facilities in regards to environmental conditions. With regard to environmental conditions category, the Elmwood Men's Facility saw an increased amount of grievances this last quarter. When we analyzed the statistics and the data, these complaints relate to climate control. As a colder weather arrived, this information allowed the Elmwood administration to work with our partner FAF, Fleet and Facility, to address these issues quickly and immediately. And if we need to provide any accommodations to inmates, we did so. And we continue to monitor the temperature throughout the week, months, and the quarter. This next slide.
Oops. That's it.
So moving forward, we're going to keep to the agenda and make sure we stick to the schedule of presenting a PSUC with the right quarter, with the right month, and we're going to be back on track after this presentation. And that's it. Thank you.
Do you have any clarifying questions, Supervisor Wasserman, that you want to ask before we go to public comment?
No, I just had a comment to tell the lieutenant, thank you very much. I laughed to myself when you pointed out the 100%, and the other two were at 99 point something. So great job, great trend. Thank you. Thank you.
I have two speaker cards here, Ron Hansen and Scott Largent, and you'll each have 2 minutes for your comment. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, supervisors and committee members. I am Ron Hansen. I am affiliated with PACT, People Acting in Community Together. First, thank you to the sheriff for providing transparency to jail grievances. To my knowledge, your office is unique in the state in this regard. Also, as noted in today's report, providing a response to over 99% of detainee grievances within 30 days really should be acknowledged. However, with an eye toward increasing transparency for the reported 1,583 grievance responses during this past quarter, again and noted in today's report, it would also help to report how many of those 1,583 were sustained and addressed, as well as how many were dismissed as unfounded, how many were dismissed as due, as the inmate rulebook says, to being foolish, mean, or using bad language, or any other categorization for response. Adding this information would provide significant support for today's report, which implies that the responses are so satisfactory that only 63 detainees felt the need to appeal their response. Without this key response information, both the declining numbers of grievances and appeals could also be reasonably interpreted as that the population is coming to the conclusion that filing a grievance is just a waste of time. I hope this is not the case, but the jail administration has the means to improve this understanding, as I've suggested. We in the community will continue to work with the sheriff and this committee in the ongoing work of improving our county's jail system and culture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to completely butcher this gal's name. Her name is Sumi Rose, is her street name. She goes by, it's P-A-N-C-H-A-L, and last name is S-U-M-A-I-T. I have the grievance number. It's G0041034. She's a mentally ill, homeless woman that stays kind of over near the Campbell Safeway, right near the light rail junction right there. She's kind of been a staple of the area there for a long time. She filled out a grievance because she wasn't taken to civil court. So Campbell ended up getting a stay-away order with a neighbor behind the Safeway. They violated this woman on this order that she wasn't served properly with. Then she was taken into the Santa Clara County Jail, and they never took her to her restraining order hearing. And I thought that was really strange. Robert Aguirre, another homeless advocate, we went and spoke at Campbell City Council. We were going to show up for Rose's hearing. I mean, we were there, but there was no Rose. So then when she got out, we started looking through the grievances, and it does state on the grievance, I have court on this date, Those are the first couple ones, and then the ones past that started saying, why didn't anybody transport me to court? So is that just slipping through the cracks? I talk a lot about the Sybil channel and how homeless people are not being properly represented. She now has a stay-away order that she has to stay 500 feet away from the Safeway right there, including the church that she does volunteer work at. She provides food for other homeless people. It's just kind of sad. They've kind of pulled the rug out from underneath this woman. She does have issues. She does have mental health issues. She is kind of a, I don't want to talk bad about her, but she is kind of a problem for Campbell. But she should have the right process to be able to go to court, take care of these things, and not just be, it's just sad right now. Maybe we could look into that. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments and questions. I also want to congratulate the sheriff and your team for continuing to improve the timeliness response rate. I didn't realize until I heard Ron's comment how unusual your department is in doing that. So that is good to learn. Thank you. I also want to appreciate the continued transparency and for working to improve the process. I am going to come back actually though to Ron's comments because they strike me as very important. The October grievance report indicated that the number of grievances we received was decreasing, and we see the same trend in this report, which is potentially great. But again, do we have an idea of why we're seeing a downward trend in the overall number of grievances we see, and can we distinguish if the trend does signify greater satisfaction or if it signifies a sense of resignation or sense that the process just isn't worthwhile?
So it appears we do analyze all the grievances that come through. We have other reports that we use internally to analyze what these trends mean. What we did see is a heavy decrease in grievances related to out-of-cell time and other things that relate to our remedial plan efforts. So the changes in operation that we've made have actually had an impact on the amount of grievances that we're receiving. So we believe that it's a wide variety of different things associated with changes in the operation that we've made. In addition to that, we do provide our facility captains and other command staff with a monthly status report on grievances in various areas, which allows them to target areas where they might see an increase in grievances so that they can target that area and find a solution. And that's one of the things we reported in the last quarter report, but we're continuing to do that every month.
Thank you. That's a great example that you made, connecting the decrease in grievances around out-of-cell time with a specific measurable increase in the amount of out-of-cell time. Is there another specific example where you have responded to a number of grievances with an operational change?
One example.
Your mic's off.
One other example I can use is when we had in the past when we had received complaints about pests at the Elmwood minimum compound, and we used that to work with the FAF and our pest control provider to quickly eradicate those pests and come up with better ways to provide a cleaner environment for the inmates. So it's a variety of things. I think as it relates to remedial plans, you saw the decrease in the grievances at the main jail quite significantly, almost 50%. That particular facility is one of the targets of our change in classification and change in how we integrate inmates with each other, high security integration. And so they're getting much more out of cell time. Things like that are the big impacts that we're seeing.
Good. Have we provided or have you ever considered providing a confidential questionnaire to inmates to get their maybe more candid reflections on how the grievance process is working? Is that something that
we have not done
would
that,
be practical?
We can look at that, absolutely.
That would be interesting. And finally, I just want to note that I was really glad to read about the custody health service kiosks. When can we expect a preliminary report on that pilot?
That would be a report from Custody Health Services, but I imagine it would take probably a couple months or a quarter for them to get some data to be able. I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine they would take some time for them to get data to report back.
That's a good point. We'll check in with Custody Health and see if we can get a first quarter report. Thank you. Any comments from anyone on the dais? Sylvia.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff's Office, for the report. I just have one question. In the report where we're talking about the grievance response upheld and original response overturned, and when we're focusing on staff and conduct and behavior when that's grieved, I noticed that there's an indication that there are some that are still open and some that were upheld, but others that were overturned. In other words, the original conduct grievance that led to the conduct was addressed. Okay, so two comments. One is, I will tell you that anecdotally, I have had contact with attorneys that are with the prison law office and that represent inmates that have had grievances in the past, and at least anecdotally, there is a sense that there are really positive changes in the jail culture, and that in particular, those that were there 5 years ago and they have returned for post-conviction issues, and they definitely notice a difference in the environment. And I wanted to share that with you, although anecdotal and it's just a communication and word of mouth. I think that combined with what we're seeing today should be noted, and you all should be commended for. What that tells me, though, is that the feedback you're getting and the incorporation of the feedback that you're getting in the way that you've described it today, Captain Sepulveda, is actually really effective. And in particular, with regard to staff conduct and behavior, as we know, when we're dealing with behavior and conduct at the jail, that impacts not only the inmates, but also the public because of their interactions with attorneys that come into the facility with families, relatives, et cetera. And when they sense already a change in the way that they're treated, whether they're attorneys or there's the public, I think there's an opportunity for maximizing the impact and the perception and the reality that the culture is shifting. So, for example, if there's grievances indicating that their family members were mistreated or they were individually mistreated, and that behavior is at least alerted to, or there's communication with the personnel about the impact that have, or there's an attorney that's filed a grievance, I think that has a great deal of value. And so I want to commend you for that and wanted to share that feedback with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we will close item 4C. Item 5 has been held at administration's request to March 5th. That's the surveillance camera rebate program, and I will reiterate that I am really looking forward to that coming back and hoping that when it does come back in March that it might be amended somewhat to include an actual rebate. Subtle, right, Martha? Are there any announcements from anyone on the dais? All right. Then with that, we will adjourn the meeting to Thursday, March 5th, 2020 at 2 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.